Welcome back to Rising. Lindsay, what is in your lens today?
Let's talk about it. So, for a quarter century, the United States held a quiet but important line. Measles was eliminated here. Not controlled, not rare, eliminated. That distinction mattered because it meant outbreaks didn't last and children didn't die from a disease we already knew how to prevent. That line is now on the verge of disappearing. In 2025, measles cases have surged to levels we haven't seen in decades, and experts say this is not random. It's the predictable result of falling vaccination rates and years of misinformation finally catching up with us. South Carolina has quarantined at least 254 people after confirming more than 24 new cases. The state has logged 123 cases this year alone after reporting just one in all of 2024. In West Texas, more than 700 cases have been confirmed since January, and 2 children have died from complications linked to the virus. Nationwide, the CDC reports 47 measles outbreaks so far this year. Former infectious disease staffer at the CDC, Fiona Haversom, told The Hill, quote, "This is a very clear example of the damage that the anti-vaccine movement has done in the United States." The data backs her up. According to the CDC, 92% of measles cases are among people who are unvaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. At the same time, MMR vaccination rates among kindergartners have slipped to 92%, down from 95% right before the pandemic. That may sound like a small drop, but measles exploits small gaps with ruthless efficiency. Even states with high overall vaccination rates aren't immune. In Texas, 94.3% of kindergartners are up to date on their MMR shots. But in Gaines County, the epicenter of the outbreak, 17.6% of kindergartners were exempt from at least one vaccine. Now, measles does not need a majority, it just needs an opening. The U.S. is now approaching a really grim milestone. A country loses its measles elimination status after 12 months of uninterrupted transmission. On January 20th, that clock runs out. A former CDC staffer called the situation, quote, "extremely embarrassing for the U.S." Michael Osterholm, director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, put it more bluntly. He said, quote, "We can already say the house is on fire. We don't need to wait for one more smoke alarm to go off to know that's happening." Now, measles didn't come roaring back because science failed. It came back because trust did. Vaccines didn't change. The virus didn't change. What changed was the volume given to fear over facts. And that cost of that choice is now being measured in hospital beds, quarantines, and children's lives. Losing elimination status may sound technical, but living with measles again is absolutely not.
I agree that the spread of measles is a very bad thing, and we should work to eliminate it, and you should get your children vaccinated against it, and health authorities should do everything to make that choice easier, and that's why I've been glad to see Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I think you seem to have a problem with, has written about it, spoken about it, visited the funeral of a child who did die of measles, and said, you should get the measles vaccine. So I mean,
well, I think that's the
on
thing.
some level, if people are not, maybe you can force them in schools. You can't just, jab people against their will. So you just have to advise them to do it. I don't know what else we can do.
Well, the people who are infectious disease experts that were quoted in this Hill article are not just looking at what RFK Jr. did in the last year, where he is, like you said, attending funerals and speaking about getting vaccinations after someone dies. They're talking about years of conversation and dialogue before he was even in this position, but even during this position where he's connecting vaccinations to things like autism without credible information and series of studies that is required to prove something like that, and then making parents have the ultimatum or the responsibility to make a doctor's choice. It is a parent's choice as well, but then also feel the stress and the weight of feeling like they may have been the cause of something happening to their child because they went with a routine vaccination that has by and large saved more lives than it has affected any lives. And so when we look at the numbers and the way that it was eradicated, and we look at the deaths, for example, or the death of the young child whose parents have made a decision not to vaccinate him in Texas, diagnosis, and then they see that their kid is deceased and they say they still would have made that same choice. It's kind of like, what was compelling this thought process to think it was such a great choice to not vaccinate your child? And this is, again, we're going to see more cases rise. And for something that was largely gone for years, I'm talking about like a quarter of a century, to see it coming back, that has to be a problem. And if people are tying that, the experts are looking to why parents might be making these decisions and seeing patterns of conversations changing about all the things that come from getting vaccinations, well, then
I'm sorry, I
people are gonna be
I have an
concerned.
entirely rival theory for why people have lost faith if skepticism of vaccines is increasing. It's because of the COVID vaccine, which was marketed and sold by health experts in our government in the most baffling and idiotic of ways. If there's a crisis of confidence in vaccination, it's because the COVID vaccine was so vigorously, it was forced on millions of workers. Millions of people were forced to get it who didn't want it because they were told it stops you from getting COVID, it prevents you from getting COVID. It does a number of good things. I recommend the COVID vaccine for people, particularly who are elderly or have a immunocompromised status. I've gotten it. I've gotten boosted. It does not stop you from getting COVID. Remember, breakthrough cases? It turned out that everyone was going to get a breakthrough case. It mitigates the most severe consequences of the disease for elderly people and some other people. It does not stop you from getting COVID. The measles vaccine does stop you from getting measles to a much, much greater degree. It was wrong, maybe it was wrong to call it a vaccine, even though it works on similar technology. We put these things in the same bucket. So a lot of people who said, oh my God, the COVID vaccine was forced on me, was sold to me by people who were wrong. Maybe that's the case for all these other vaccines too. So I point that squarely at Fauci and Birx and all those sorts of people who said, you got to get this to protect your health and protect the health of the people around you. That ended up not being, ended up at least being much more complicated than that. It's not complicated with the measles vaccine, I agree, but people, the misinformation is coming from the health authorities themselves.
We have a like-minded thought process around the COVID vaccine. I told you I was one of the employees that was forced to get it. Very frustrating, especially as a pregnant employee that was forced to get it or keep my job or not know how it will affect my
that's
child.
horrible.
Yeah, so I was in that situation. But I don't think that that's the only reason. I think when we look at RFK being the chosen leader as HHS positioning, he has a history of saying things that you have to acknowledge. We can't just comb over it and say, oh, well, never mind. He's in this position. And he changed his stance after someone died.
He said that no vaccine is entirely safe.
He also has connected vaccine administration to autism without factual information. And as a parent, that's one of the scariest thoughts to think about, is that you, by making a decision for your child, have caused something to affect your child in any way like that. And so if that's on the mind of parents and he's not specifically adamant that he has no dot being connected in that case and no studies that truly do that in a thorough way, then I don't think
you're being
that's
a little
accurate.
too aggressive now. He has pointed to studies and evidence that he thinks are compelling. Now, most or virtually all experts think that the evidence of the studies that he's pointing to are not compelling and are erroneous and are contradicted by volumes of evidence. But he didn't just wake up one day and magically declare
that's what I mean.
this out of
So he's
nowhere.
the guy in charge, and he thinks this is compelling. But most experts are saying this is not correct. You're leading the public in the wrong way, and we should just accept the word of a man who's in this position as opposed to the experts that study this.
Well, okay, but his perspective, he's coming from a consumer harm perspective, where in his view, experts are bought and paid for by the corporations that market these things, and experts said smoking is perfect, is good for you, is healthy for you for years and years and years until they realized,
well,
it actually causes cancer. That's what
we
he
didn't
thinks
risk
the
losing
case is.
our measles elimination status under any other HHS secretary besides RFK. So it's like, well, the buck stops with you. Why is it happening right now? COVID, like you said,
Because it's
was
after
almost
COVID.
6 years ago.
Well, it took a while
for people to say, oh, well,
internalize.
no, the person who doesn't
They're saying,
trust vaccinations.
I really was tricked. I guess I wouldn't give it to my kid.
Just right now, they just started to think that.
Well, we're in the immediate aftermath of COVID.
Up next, a CNN anchor clashed with a panelist who said that certain cultures were not, quote, compatible with the U.S. Stay with us.